My girlfriend cheated on me for 7 months while living in my house, but when her parents found out the truth, they cut all contact with her and never expected my revenge at their Christmas party. I'm 32 years old, work in finance, and honestly, I need to tell this story because what happened a few months ago literally changed my life in a way I never imagined. I guess I should start at the beginning, when I met Stephanie 2 years ago at Gabriel's Christmas party, my longtime friend since high school. Gabriel always threw these huge parties at his house, with all the people from work and friends from everywhere. And that year, I had gone alone because I had just gotten out of a relationship that didn't work out. Stephanie was there with her younger sister Paige, and Gabriel introduced us because she worked at his company, in the human resources department, I think. And honestly, I thought she was amazing from the first moment. She was funny, smart, super attractive, and we had a lot in common, or so I thought. We started talking that night and basically didn't leave each other's side the whole party, and by the end of the night we exchanged numbers and agreed to meet for dinner a few days later. The first dates were perfect. I mean, the kind where you feel like you met someone truly special, you know? We talked about everything. We laughed a ton, and it seemed like we had the same goals in life, like getting married eventually, having kids, building something together. After 6 months, we were already living together in my house. A house I had bought like 2 years before and was super proud of because it had taken me a lot of work to save for the down payment. The relationship seemed to be going perfectly, honestly. Stephanie got along well with my friends. I tried to get along with hers, although her sister Paige always looked at me weird. Like she didn't like me from the start, but I never understood why. Her parents, Sharon and Kenneth, were good people, very traditional and hardworking, and they accepted me from the beginning. Kenneth had a construction business, and Sharon was a retired teacher, and they both loved their daughters a lot, or so I thought at the time. I visited them often with Stephanie. We'd go to dinner at their house on Sundays, and everything seemed normal, a serious relationship moving towards something more permanent. Then this year came, and I started thinking seriously about proposing to her. We had been together for almost 2 years. We were living together, and I felt like it was the right time. I started planning everything in secret. I went to talk to her parents like in October, to ask for their blessing because I knew they were traditional and that would matter to them. And both Sharon and Kenneth said yes, that they would be happy to have me as a son-in-law. Kenneth even got emotional when I told him I wanted to take care of his daughter for life. He hugged me and everything. I bought the ring like a month before Gabriel's Christmas party. Spent like $8,000 on a ring she had mentioned once that she liked when we passed by a jewelry store. And I had everything planned to propose at the Christmas party, in the same place where we met 2 years earlier. It seemed super romantic and meaningful to me, you know? But well, this is where everything went to hell. It was like 3 weeks before the Christmas party, a Friday afternoon. I had left early that day with a couple of friends to go fishing at a lake that was like 2 hours from the city. We had planned to stay the whole weekend, but one of the friends had a family emergency, and we decided to come back that same Friday night. I got to my house around 9 at night, and when I was parking the car in the driveway, I saw that all the living room lights were on, and I heard voices from outside. I thought Stephanie was watching a movie or something, but when I went in, I heard she was talking to someone, and I recognized Paige's voice, her sister. I didn't want to interrupt because I knew Paige didn't like me much. So I stayed in the entrance, taking off my shoes and putting away the fishing stuff. And that's when I heard what they were saying. Stephanie was laughing and saying something like, "I can't believe Dylan thinks I'm going to marry him. He's so pathetic." And Paige was cracking up and said something like, "Haven't you told him the truth about Jared yet?" And I just stood there frozen, with one boot on and the other in my hand, trying to process what the hell I had just heard. Jared was a guy Stephanie had mentioned a couple of times. She said he was someone from the gym she went to, but I never thought there was anything more. I kept listening, and Stephanie said, "Jared is so much better than Dylan in every way. He's more attractive, more fun, and definitely better in bed." And they both started laughing like it was the funniest joke in the world. Paige then asked, "So when are you going to break up with him?" And Stephanie answered, "I don't know. Maybe after Christmas. I want to see what he gives me first. Plus, it's comfortable living in his house without paying anything. And Jared doesn't have a place as nice." At that moment, I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach, literally couldn't breathe right. and my hands started shaking. Paige then said something that finished destroying me. She said, "I love how Dylan is so dumb. He doesn't notice anything. How long have you been with Jared?" "Like 6 months." And Stephanie answered, "Almost 7, since May. And every time Dylan works late or goes out with his friends, I go with Jared. It's perfect." I stood there listening to how the woman I was going to marry, the woman I loved and had shared 2 years of my life with, described me as a convenient idiot while she was cheating on me with another guy for 7 months. 7 damn months. I don't know how long I stood there. I think it was like 5 minutes, but it felt like an eternity. And then very slowly I started backing toward the door without making noise. I left the house, got in the car, and left. I had no idea where to go. I just drove aimlessly for like half an hour until I found myself in the parking lot of a cheap motel near the highway. I rented a room for that night and sat there on the bed trying to process everything I had heard. I tried to sleep, but couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard their laughter and their words mocking me. Saturday morning, around 6, I got up and knew exactly what I had to do. I drove back to my house and saw that Paige's car wasn't there anymore. I figured she had left around midnight or something. I went in as quietly as I could. Stephanie was still sleeping in the bedroom, and I started packing all her stuff. All her clothes, her shoes, her bathroom products, her books, literally everything that was hers I put in boxes and trash bags. It took me like 3 hours, but I did it. And after that, I called an emergency locksmith I knew from work and paid him extra to come on a Saturday and change all the locks on the house. When the locksmith finished, around 11 in the morning, I put all the boxes and bags with Stephanie's things on the front porch, taped a note to the door that said, "I heard your entire conversation with Paige Friday night. I never want to see or talk to you again. Your stuff is here. The locks are changed, don't try to contact me," and I left again. This time, I went to a retreat center that was like 3 hours from the city, a place in the mountains where I had been before when I needed to think and disconnect from everything. I rented a cabin for 2 days and turned off my phone. Those 2 days were weird, honestly. On one hand, I was devastated. I felt like my entire life had been a lie for the last 7 months. But on the other hand, there was a part of me that was relieved to have discovered the truth before proposing and marrying her. Can you imagine if I had married her and then found all this out? It would have been 1,000 times worse. But it still hurt. It hurt a lot to think about all the times she had lied to my face, all the nights she supposedly was working, late or going out with friends when she was actually with that guy, Jared. Monday morning, I turned on my phone and had literally over 200 messages and like 50 missed calls. Most were from Stephanie, but there were also some from Paige and numbers I didn't recognize. Stephanie's messages started angry, like, "How dare you kick me out of my house?" Which wasn't even her house. It was mine. And then they became desperate, saying we could talk, that it was a misunderstanding, that she really loved me. I deleted all the messages, without reading most of them, and blocked her number and Paige's. But then I realized something. Her parents didn't know anything about what had happened, and Stephanie was probably telling them a completely different version of the story, making me look like the bad guy. So I decided to call Sharon and Kenneth directly. Kenneth answered the phone and sounded worried, asked me where I was and if I was okay, because Stephanie had told them I had gone crazy and kicked her out of the house for no reason. I told him I needed to talk to him and Sharon in person, that it was important, and we agreed to meet that same afternoon at a coffee shop near their house. When I got to the coffee shop, Sharon and Kenneth were already there waiting for me, and they both looked confused and worried. We sat down and I told them exactly what had happened, word for word what I heard between Stephanie and Paige, about the cheating with Jared since May, the mocking about me, everything. Sharon started crying while I talked, and Kenneth turned completely red with anger. At first I think they didn't want to believe me. But then I took out my phone and showed them some messages Stephanie had sent me after I kicked her out of the house, where she basically admitted that, yes, she had been with Jared, but it was my fault for not paying her enough attention, that if I had been a better boyfriend, she wouldn't have had to look for someone else. Kenneth exploded when he read those messages. He said he couldn't believe his daughters were capable of doing something like that he and Sharon hadn't raised them to be liars and cheaters. Sharon kept crying and saying she was so sorry, that she had no idea Stephanie was like that, and that both she and Kenneth supported me completely. Then Kenneth asked me if I had planned to propose to Stephanie, because she had mentioned something about that to them, like it was ridiculous that I would even consider it. I told them yes, that in fact I had gone to talk to them in October to ask for their blessing and had bought her an expensive ring, and that I had planned to propose at Gabrielle's Christmas party. Sharon covered her mouth with her hand and started crying harder, and Kenneth got up from the table and said he needed air, left the coffee shop for a few minutes. When Kenneth came back, he had an expression on his face I had never seen before, like pure determination. He told me that both he and Sharon had made a decision right then and there. They told me they were going to cut all ties with Stephanie and also with Paige, because Paige had been complicit in all of this by knowing about the cheating and encouraging it instead of telling her sister that what she was doing was wrong. I tried to tell them they didn't have to do something so drastic, that it was their family. But Kenneth said, "No, Dylan, you were going to be part of our family. You came to us with honesty and respect, and my daughters betrayed you in the worst possible way. I can't forgive that." The next few days were crazy. Apparently, Sharon and Kenneth called Stephanie and Paige and told them exactly what they thought of them. Stephanie was living with Paige at that moment because obviously she couldn't come back to my house, and from what I found out later, Kenneth and Sharon cut all financial support they were giving to both of them. Apparently, Kenneth had been paying for both their cars and part of the rent on Paige's apartment, and Sharon sent them money every month to help with expenses. But all of that ended overnight. But wait, because it gets better. Turns out Gabriel, my friend who organized the Christmas party and was Stephanie's boss, found out about all the drama because obviously in a not-so-big city, news travels fast. Gabriel called me like a week after all the chaos and asked me if the story he had heard was true. I confirmed everything, and Gabriel got furious, told me that Stephanie had been missing work lately and using excuses of family emergencies, but now he understood she was probably using that time to be with Jared. Gabriel then told me he was going to fire Stephanie, not just for the absences, but because he said he didn't want to have in his company someone capable of doing what she did to me. I told him he didn't have to do that I didn't want him making work decisions based on my personal situation. But Gabriel said, "Dylan, you've been my brother since high school. I've only known her for 2 years, and besides, her behavior has affected office morale because everyone knows what happened and nobody wants to work with her." He fired her that same week. Stephanie tried to contact me like 1,000 times after that, sending me messages from unknown numbers because I had blocked her, saying that because of me, she had lost her job and her family, that I was vindictive and manipulative. I blocked every new number she used, and eventually she stopped trying. Fast forward like 3 weeks, we were in early December, and Gabriel's Christmas party was just around the corner. Gabriel called me and asked if I was still going, and honestly at first I hesitated because that place had a lot of memories of Stephanie. But then I thought, why should I let her ruin something I enjoyed? It was my friend throwing the party, not hers, and I wasn't going to hide like I had done something wrong when she was the one who betrayed me. So I told Gabriel, yes, I'd be there. The night of the party, I dressed up nice, put on a suit that made me look pretty good if I say so myself, and went alone but with my head held high. When I got to Gabriel's house, there were like 100 people there. Music, food, all the usual festive atmosphere. A lot of people came up to say hi, and some who knew what had happened asked me how I was, but I just told them I was fine and changed the subject. Honestly, I was having fun, talking to friends I hadn't seen in a while, having some drinks, and for the first time in weeks I felt like myself again. But then, around 10 at night, something happened that I didn't expect at all. The front door opened, and Stephanie walked in. She wasn't invited. Gabriel had confirmed to me that he hadn't invited her, and that in fact he had specifically told her not to come. But there she was. She looked terrible, honestly. Her hair was all messy, clothes that looked like she hadn't changed them in days, and red eyes like she had been crying. She started looking for me with her eyes around the room, and when she saw me, she started walking toward me. Everyone noticed what was happening, and the music kind of went down in volume. People stopped talking, like those moments in movies where everything suddenly gets tense. Stephanie got to where I was standing and started talking, saying, "Dylan, please, we need to talk. I made a mistake. I miss you. We can fix this." I just looked at her and said, There's nothing to fix, Stephanie. I heard everything you said about me with your sister. I know you were cheating on me for 7 months with Jared. There's no going back from that. She started crying and saying she was confused, that Jared didn't mean anything, that I was the love of her life, and I just laughed because it was so absurd. I said, "The love of your life? You called me pathetic? You said you were only with me for my house and to see what I'd give you for Christmas. You said Jared was better than me in every way, and now you come to tell me I'm the love of your life?" People around were listening to all this, and Stephanie realized it, got even more desperate, and tried to grab my arm, saying I was exaggerating, that I had misinterpreted the conversation with her sister, that she was just venting because she had had a bad day. I moved her hand away and said, "Stephanie, leave. I never want to see you again. What we had ended the moment you decided to cheat on me and mock me with your sister." She kept insisting and started making a bigger scene, saying I was cruel, that I had left her with nothing, that because of me she had lost her family and her job. Gabriel finally intervened with a couple of his friends and told Stephanie she had to leave, that she wasn't invited and was causing problems. Stephanie started yelling that everyone was hypocrites, that they were defending me when I was the bad guy for kicking her out of the house without giving her a chance to explain, and Gabriel literally had to ask his friends to escort her out of the party. They took her out while she kept yelling and crying, and when the door finally closed behind her, everyone was silent for a few seconds before someone turned the music back up and the party continued. After that, several people came up to tell me I had done the right thing, that I had to stay firm, and honestly, I felt good about how I had handled the situation. I didn't yell at her, didn't lose control, just told her the truth to her face and didn't allow her to manipulate me with tears and false apologies. Gabriel gave me a strong hug and said, "Brother, I'm proud of you. I know this was hard, but you handled it like a champ. So where are we now?" Well, from what I heard through the grapevine, things didn't go very well for Stephanie after all this. Apparently, Paige eventually kicked her out of her apartment because she couldn't pay her part of the rent without her parents' support and without a job, and Stephanie had to move in with Jared, the gym guy. But I heard that relationship didn't last long either, because it turns out Jared was also dating other people. And when Stephanie found out, she exploded. Ironic, right? What you did to someone else eventually gets done to you. Sharon and Kenneth kept their word and haven't spoken to either of their daughters. Sharon called me like a month ago to ask how I was and to apologize again for everything. And I told her it wasn't her fault, that she and Kenneth had always been good people to me. She told me it was painful not to talk to her daughters, but they couldn't forgive what they had done, especially because Stephanie and Paige never really apologized or showed genuine remorse. They were just angry because they lost the financial support and comfort they had. As for me, honestly, I'm fine. The first few months were hard. I'm not gonna lie. There were nights where I stayed awake thinking about all the signs I probably missed, wondering if there was something I could have done differently. But after a while, I realized it wasn't my fault. I was a good boyfriend. I was honest, faithful, had future plans with her, and she simply decided to betray me because it was convenient for her. That says more about her character than mine. I sold the engagement ring and got back like 60% of what I paid. Not ideal, but at least I don't have it stored in a drawer, reminding me of what could have been. I've been going out more with friends, focusing on my work, and basically rebuilding my life without Stephanie in it. I also started going to therapy because even though I wasn't completely devastated, I did need to talk to someone about this whole situation and process the betrayal in a healthy way. Have I thought about having a serious relationship again? Honestly, not much yet. I think I need time for myself before trusting someone that way again. But I'm not bitter or cynical about love or relationships in general. I just learned that you have to pay attention to red flags and not ignore them for love or hope. In retrospect, Paige always treated me badly, and I ignored it, thinking she would eventually accept me, but that was a sign that something wasn't right in that family, or at least in that dynamic. Last week, I was at the supermarket and saw Paige in the other aisle. She saw me too, and quickly turned around and went another way. I didn't chase her or anything, just continued with my shopping, but it gave me a weird feeling to see how someone who used to see me as a fool now couldn't even look me in the face. I guess that's karma or justice or whatever you want to call it. What surprises me most about all this is how people showed their true nature when things got tough. Gabriel proved to be a true friend. Sharon and Kenneth proved to have solid principles, even though it meant cutting ties with their own daughters, and my other friends were there for me when I needed them. On the other hand, Stephanie and Paige showed they were capable of betrayal, lies, and manipulation without real remorse, only regret at having been caught and having lost what they had. If I could go back and change something, honestly, I'm not sure what I would change. Maybe I would have paid more attention to some things. Maybe I would have trusted my intuition more when something didn't feel right. But at the end of the day, I think everything happened the way it had to happen. I discovered the truth before marrying her, and that saved me years of misery, money on a complicated divorce, and possibly kids trapped in the middle of all that mess. Now, when I go to Gabriel's parties, I feel free, light, without the pressure of maintaining a relationship that was built on lies. I can be myself, talk to whoever I want, go out when I want, and I don't have to worry about someone cheating on me while I'm at work or with friends, and that, honestly, is priceless. The betrayal hurt, it hurt a lot, but it freed me from something that would have been worse in the long run, and for that I almost thank Stephanie for being careless enough to have that conversation with her sister. Right when I got home that night. If they had waited 30 more minutes to talk, I would have entered the house. They would have changed the subject, and I probably never would have found out until after we got married. Life goes on, I guess. I'm 32 years old, I have a good job, a house that's completely mine, loyal friends, and now I also have a story to tell about how I dodged a huge bullet. Is it the ending I imagined when I started dating Stephanie 2 years ago? Not at all. Is it better than the ending I would have had if I had married her without knowing the truth? Absolutely. And I'm okay with that.